Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Down the Wrestling Rabbit Hole. And Mozart, we've made it another week. Our producer has given us another week's, I guess, uh, what do they call it?
Furlough. I don't know. Is that the
Furlough,
right
or
word?
whatever you like when you're sent, you get a reprieve. We've gotten another week reprieve, like
He says people listen to us, but I don't know about that, man.
yeah, and I can't believe we're still on, but we'll keep producer Steve happy, and on this, I still call it a Lariat network.
I
Um,
love it.
But Richard, what do you do when First of all, let me ask you how your day was. Then I'll kind of throw out a topic.
Oh, how the day goes. Yeah, because I just want the fans to know that Howard set me off the other day. We'll get into that a little bit later too. He likes to light me up. Actually, I triggered myself, Howard, so it wasn't really you. It was just
I just sent you a clip, man. That's all I did was send
you
you a
sent me a
video
clip,
clip.
and I was like, "What the hell?" Now, so here's this is as we titled the episodes. We're gonna have to throw the Pop Tarts in here somewhere, dude. I don't know if you know, but I love Pop Tarts, and I haven't been able to eat Pop Tarts in years because I try to stay in shape. Plus, I'm legitimately pre-diabetic, so that's one of the worst things I can be eating. Like 40 grams of sugar in one Pop Tart. It's ridiculous,
Oh,
right? It's like, okay, let's just run to the hospital. Yeah,
right.
it's huge.
Well,
Like I
eat it
even
on the way
started.
to the hospital. That way, it shrinks down your time.
Exactly, yeah. So I pull into Vitamin Shop, and I got my hair cut this afternoon. I pull into Vitamin Shop, and I'm like, oh man, they had these like 50% off. It was like protein pastries. They look like little Pop Tarts. They're about half the size of a real one, dude. 4 grams of sugar in each one, which is I try to stay under that. If any, we'll do something valuable in the show, and we'll teach somebody something.
Some
3 to 4
nutritional
grams
advice.
of sugar, like in a serving, if you're really trying to maybe cut weight or drop your blood sugar level, which are both super important for like longevity and muscle building. But so I'm like, I got to try one of these things. Now, there's probably 1,000 other chemicals in it, but hell, I grew up swimming in the Delaware River, Howard, so I'm
Right.
safe. So yeah, but breathing refinery air and swimming in the Delaware River, I am so immune to crap, and that's probably not far from the truth. So these things, I throw them in the microwave for 10 seconds. I thought I was in heaven. I was like, holy crap, I got to go back there tomorrow and buy the rest of these things up. Unbelievable. So for all my folks out there, for all our listeners who are like a Pop Tart fiend, but might not know how bad they legitimately are for you, I don't remember the brand name, but Vitamin Shop. Go vitaminshop.com. You can probably find them on Amazon, like anywhere. Like so that was my day, man. Was a fresh haircut and some Pop Tarts. No,
Nice.
no, no machines went into business on their own.
I say the coffee machine was good. Water cooler was good.
Well, ice machine,
Ice
yeah, it's all
machine.
good.
That there was all good. Well,
I had this, my creative genius. I said maybe we can break Howard into the wrestling business under a mask. Is the ice machine? You can come out like the ice baby, and you
right.
know slither your way down to the ring, like get some kind of strut.
I'll
And
figure something out, but it's got to be
hey,
under a mask because I don't want people actually knowing who I am and
oh yeah, exactly. And
calling
it's
me
like
out on it. And
as long as you can take a back bump and throw a reverse elbow and a clothesline, like you'd probably be pretty
a
good.
lariat, it's a
The
lariat.
lariat. Oh, now that's going to get us censored. Like you
Oh,
never
now
call
we're
it
done.
clothesline.
We've gone 5 shows. Now all of a sudden, Steve's
Oh
going to cancel us.
Jesus.
Now you
Yeah.
can't. We're done. Been a nice ride, people.
Wait, Steve, is it in the budget to get one of those little earpieces so you can like kind of Vince McMahon us and scream at us from the back?
Right? Why is it
Oh, it's
always
in
Howard's
Howard's
budget?
budget. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But
It's part of when Howard lets us open up a wrestling promotion.
yeah, yeah.
It
Um,
might make too much sense. Our promotion would make so much sense, Howard. We wouldn't sell a damn ticket.
yeah, people wouldn't want to come because it was common sense
No.
and actually decent wrestling. And who wants to see that nowadays? Nobody.
Yeah. So how
But
about you? What'd you get into today? Did you get in trouble at work or anything?
no, no. I mean, it was a pretty good day. But it had me thinking. While we're at work, because I mean, it always happens. And listen, it
Yeah.
happens in every occupation you could imagine. And I'll kind of throw out the topic, and then I'll throw out the clip that I shared with you and Steve on what kind of who I didn't even know this was going to be our topic till literally 5 seconds from going on the air.
Nice.
And that's no joke. I mean, you asked the people involved in the major production that this show is. We had no idea what we were talking about till we literally went live.
Yeah.
But
Maybe we should change it from down the rabbit hole to working on the fly.
right. So what happens? Like, I mean, things go wrong, on my job, and I got to try to figure a
Yeah.
way around it or how to fix it. And I'm sure you have things that go wrong, and you got to kind of improvise or adapt to something new that's going on. Um, what happens when things go wrong in wrestling? Because this is, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
we work without an edit. It's live. It's in front of people. And I asked that because we were watching a clip that I sent you guys of Ted
Hmm.
DiBiase and Magnum TA for the North Atlantic Championship, I believe it was,
Yeah.
right? And I think DiBiase got whipped into the turnbuckle, and one of the turnbuckles came loose and
Yeah.
actually fell. And I mean, it actually looked like part of the match, but when you look at the people scrambling to try to fix it, it really wasn't. And as Magnum's coming into DiBiase, he picks up the buckle and whacks Magnum with it, which was not part of the program. But man, did it look like it was part of the program because of just how fluid the thing that boom, they ran it, they hit the ropes, he come off, he saw the rope down there, and literally he turned around and he picked it up
Hmm.
and he whacked him with it. And it just looked so fluid with their instincts and how it didn't listen, it didn't affect the outcome of the match. It was just another
Right.
element to the match that was unexpected. But what happens when something doesn't go quite right in the ring and now you're both standing there? Like, what do you do, Mozart? What goes through your mind when either
So
you miss something or your opponent misses
yeah.
something?
So I watched that clip. I'll start out, and I watched it like 3 or 4 times. And when I find myself each time watching it, trying to wonder, did that legitimately break? I
Right.
don't. I don't have the definitive answer, but it looks to me like it wasn't supposed to happen. So in other words, it wasn't part of the script, and hey, part of the show. It just happened,
It
and that's one
happened.
of the
Right.
things when you train at a really good pro wrestling school. Like it's one thing to learn the moves really well. I've seen crash pads and moonsaults and things, and that's all great. But I often wonder, as I was trained, and as we talked to our producer Steve, he was trained where he did the Monster Factory. So if you go somewhere really reputable, they should be teaching you safety first, right? So when those ropes break like that, that's why you're always taught to grab the rope with the correct hand, your left hand, feet in, because and to not always have a hand on that rope, because if you see folks and they back bump on the rope straight with no protection and that rope breaks, they're going to fall out on their head and probably do more damage than not to themselves. And it could be permanent damage. So that's just a protection thing, is to grab the rope. So if they snap like that, and it's not as uncommon as you think, particularly when rings get a lot of wear. WWE, if I'm not mistaken, replaces their stuff constantly, so there's a constant turnover, maybe weekly. Um, but if you work for an independent promoter and that ring has got a lot of wear on it, it's not always them being negligent. Everybody should be looking at their equipment, making sure when they set it up, the ring crew should be looking at stuff, making sure the turnbuckles are connected right and there's nothing shady. But again, it happens. So it looked to me, and I'm like, wow, he just picked it up and used it because it's there. Because again, what wrestling really is storytelling. It's common sense. So if you're not, as long as I always kind of had the philosophy that I developed on my own and through a lot of my mentors, that as long as I'm not putting the fans in danger, my opponent in danger, or going against what the booker or promoter wants, then it's pretty reasonable to say, okay, I'm going to use something. For example, that turnbuckle is right there as the heel. Why wouldn't I pick it up and try to swap them with it when the ref's not looking or whatever, Um, and I thought it was brilliant. And then, as people started to, it looked like they were kind of rushing to try to get the ring put back together, which made me think that they wouldn't do that in the middle of a match if it was quote unquote part of the match, right? So I think that, first of all, it's safety training. What happens? That's a common thing that we would drill. What happens when the top rope breaks? So okay, all of a sudden you're probably not going to be doing your running of the rope spots, right? Hey, Stro, what's going
What's
on?
going on,
Welcome,
Stro?
welcome. We're talking a little bit about what happens when things go awry in the ring, because that seems to be kind of like a common theme. Like Howard had sent this really cool clip of Ted DiBiase and Magnum working, and the rope broke. And DiBiase just picks up the top turnbuckles to heel and nails him with it, and he gets a 2 count, of course. But they were really, really running to try to get the ropes fixed again, which that could have been part of the angle. They did things so well back in those days, but it didn't look like it was. It looked like a legitimate rope
No, it looked
break
like a legitimate rope break. I mean, to me
because.
being a fan,
And
is what
even
it looked
if you
like.
noticed, like they didn't do any running of the rope spots after that. Like I think there was one where like someone fell into the rope and kind of that the whole thing that's popular now where guys run the second rope and they dropped it. Like I think Jey Uso does. Ray did it because he was Stro, you know better than anybody. You were on Ray's short, so when it was he was just like screw it, I'm going to hit the second rope. It works well for him, but they were doing like falling into the rope like that because they didn't have a top rope and and this it's great that you jumped on because I was telling Howard that if you go to a great wrestling school, um, and you turn on, say you go on YouTube today and everybody's, or not YouTube, but Facebook, whatever it is, social media, and they're advertising their wrestling school, you'll see crash mats, moonsaults, and a lot of suicide dives. I don't see anybody training on what if the opponent doesn't kick out when they should be kicking out.
Right,
The art of making it look like the opponent kicked out, the art of what happens when that top rope breaks and you don't have your high spots anymore, or at least traditional high spots. Um, it was a part of my training. What about you, Stro? Do you remember in those days running drills on? Hey, guess what? You don't have a top rope. Guess what? Your guy's injured. Communicate with them, which is another thing too that I'm not understanding with TV wrestling. Why are they not talking to their opponent when they should be? Seems like they're doing a lot of chit chatting when they don't need to. But I typically, if my opponent takes a bump and I go down, it's usually like, you good? Like depending on what it is, they back bump. Like, of course, I'm not going to, hey, you good? But
right,
if they take a pretty big bump or they take a shady looking finish, I might, especially as a heel, hesitate just a minute before I cover to give them for me to get visual. That's the thing too, is always to get the visual, the eye to eye, because they don't even have to say a word, and sometimes I can tell if their bell's rung or not. But
right.
Stro, what do talk a little bit about that if you can? Like, do you remember doing things like that when you were training and even on the job training? Well, I think we
Sure.
do.
Are you muted?
Yeah, I think he's muted.
Yeah, I think he's muted.
Howard likes to mute our legends when they come on and hang up on them and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Stro. Sorry, man.
Sure, let's see. We'll try to get back to you here. Yeah, Stroke, can you hang up and jump back on real quick? Maybe it's the connection.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I always look forward to his input and
Yeah,
things.
because he's kind of like a link to the what you might call the real old school guys, the real old guard.
Right.
Even deeper than. I'm proud to say that the history that I had, my training always is in line with what he talks about, and he was coming up under legends like Jerry Jarrett.
Yeah,
Not that the guys that I mean, certainly Jim Kettner, Glenn Osborne, they're legends in their own right, but I think that if you got somebody with Jerry's credibility and what he did in wrestling and the way that he trained and broke guys in, or had guys
absolutely.
train them and break them in. But but I
No,
think it's an interesting conversation, Howard, because if you're watching it as a fan, you're a very very knowledgeable fan, and you can tell when things don't look right.
no,
Like
absolutely. But when I know you spent a lot of time in ECWA with Jim Kettner, but when you would go to other promotions, would you, check the ropes, check the
mm-hmm,
ring,
always.
that how solid the ring is, how much give does it have,
Mm-hmm.
like where the I don't want to say sweet spots are, but like where safe spots are, and kind of get an
Yeah.
idea on, if I'm going out of the ring, I'm going on this side because it looks like there's more clearance over here as opposed to because the layout could be different places, um, and things like that. Are those things that you look for when you go to another promotion and wrestle for somebody else?
Yeah, and a lot of times when you see guys get in the ring and run the ropes, it could be that that's the first time they got into the ring that day, and they're just kind of feeling it out right on the fly. Other times it might be just to legitimately loosen up and still kind of see how the ring feels. Because typically, if something goes wrong, the guys will come back in and be like, "Hey, watch that! The middle of the rope on such and such a side, it's really slippery. Like there's a spot in the ring that's really slippery or something, or." There seems to be something wrong with it. Should always be the middle that you bump in anyway, which has become a thing now, like bumping on the apron. Like, listen, careers are ending
I I could not
real
understand
early.
that for the life of me, why you would bump on the hardest part
Well,
of
the
the
other side of that is
construction.
too is yes, first of all, why are you? But why are we doing it? They, not we, because I don't. Why are they doing it on shows that honestly don't mean anything? Like,
Right,
who are you trying to impress? And then I don't want to hear that. I've debated that philosophy of, well, wrestle as hard as you would in front of 5 people as you would 5,000. Yes. But I'm still not doing a pile driver or a brain buster onto that apron in front of 5,000 people unless it means something one
right,
time at a really high stakes show. So that's what I mean by important shows. Like what, especially with TV wrestling, like when you're on the road a certain amount of days a week, and then you get to your Monday or your Friday or your Wednesday night show, whatever night, whether every night of the week it seems now. But why are we going out of our way to do some crazy bump or spot on a Monday night show that's so incredibly lackluster that the ratings are already showing it dropping down, that there's nothing really to gain out of it? Because working hard, contrary to what a lot of people think, doesn't mean taking dangerous bumps, or even a lot of them if the story doesn't call for it. Again, what's my story I'm telling? Why am I not chain wrestling? I love the lucha style. I sent you guys an awesome video of Ultimo Dragon and Dragon Kid. And the way that they would fly around, trade holds, flip over, land on their feet, is a style that I can't do, but I love it. And I can wrestle guys that do that style. But it's not as hard on their body, hence why Ultimo Dragon, Jushin Thunder Liger, who did over time as they got older have to change their style, but that's father time.
right,
That to me wasn't necessarily as attributed to beating their bodies up as some of the not even all that old guys today that I see in the ring with a lot of miles and a lot of wear. They're moving slower. They're getting in and out of the ring slower. They're getting to the other side. Everything is just not as crisp and sharp as it used to be. Not just because of father time, but because of things like we were just talking. Find the middle of the ring,
right,
bump in the middle of the ring. There are certain rings that I've been in where even a corner bump has been comfortable. It just depends on the type of ring. I can tell you that most flex beam rings, which is what you would probably see on TV, which means that they're these steel bars that just flex and they cross over each other like this.
okay, right,
There may or may not be a spring in the middle. For Right Coast Pro, we had a spring in the middle only because the wear on that ring, you would probably get a year out of that ring with all the guys bumping on it and doing all this stuff. And then you've got your beams would just go like this and be no good. So even if you turned them over, then they're like bridges and nothing's flat. So it's kind of like, how do we preserve the ring, but still be workable? So we came up with a solution, and JJ built this awesome spring and adjusted it. But the spring didn't mean that it felt like a trampoline to land in. All that
okay,
did was keep the beams from getting torn up. So
right,
a lot of times now when you go to an independent show, what's really cool is you can either see them. Usually you don't see them setting up. You should walk in and see everything looking like beautiful. Like the ring is, the entranceways are set up. Your concessions are set up. You should see that well prepared independent show. I would recommend always having that ready. But if you're the type of show like ECWA is, and there's some other promotions out there to say, hey, let's let the kids mess around a little bit. Let's go sign some autographed afterwards. You might see the ring start to get broken down, and people will look at it and be like, oh, that looks like it's really hard to land in. Well, most of the spots in it are really hard to land in. But when you just basically look at a circumference in the center where you've got the most give on the ring, which is going to hopefully, again, you want to do body weight and distribution. We are taught this. So when things go awry, that you protect yourself, again, there's nothing wrong with switching things on the fly. Like if you know your basic story that you're telling, which you should, based on card placement, the program that you're in with your opponent,
Right.
what the promoters asked for, a couple other variables, then you should still be able to tell that story without killing yourself. Hey, he's back with us. Can you hear
What's
us
going
now?
on, show? I still think we're having an audio problem with him. I can't hear him. We can say,
Oh, wow.
Me?
Heard you for a second.
yeah,
Can you
heard
hear
you
me?
for a second.
How about
Oh,
now?
there you go.
Okay. All right, you can hear me now, right?
There we go. Yes,
We
sir.
got you now. We got you now, Stroke. How
Okay,
are you?
cool. All right, cool. I was going to answer the question you asked earlier. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were putting all kinds of scenarios. Um,
Mhm.
like, I mean, we were taught to not have matches without running the ropes, just bat based chain wrestling.
Mhm.
Heck, there were times I remember learning a headlock takeover without mats, that we would just do it right on the
Mhm.
wood to get our bodies accustomed to the ring, right? And how to
Yeah.
do it properly. Well, the philosophy was, if we can do a headlock takeover correctly on the wood, then we would do. It would be better once the mats are on and everything. So, and plus to toughen our bodies up
That's
for
interesting.
for
Cool.
the ring awareness. I mean, the real old school stuff. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we were putting all kinds of situations, scenarios, and constantly studying videotape on top of that, and conditioning. And
Yes.
um, I'll be honest with you, when I was training for the pancration for the MMA style
Mhm.
fighting, a lot of what our training, what
Mhm.
we did was just pretty much grappling. Then it was mostly grappling and takedowns and learning strikes and
Wow.
submissions and everything, uh,
Hmm.
and all that. I mean, and it wasn't really far fetched from the wrestling training that I was brought up in to begin with. So I mean, there were a lot of similarities with that. But I mean, yeah, we're putting all kinds of situations
Wow.
just to be prepared for anything could happen. I mean, you mentioned earlier about DiBiase and Magnum TA. I mean, two of the greats. My God, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, DiBiase is my boy, though. I mean, that's my guy. I love DiBiase's work, body of work. It's tremendous
I
and
do too. He was one of my influences. Yeah.
true master. And like we were taught. Go back earlier. We were taught about ring awareness and using what we have in the ring, whether it be the person you're working with or surroundings, to
Mhm.
tell that story and
Yeah.
get that story across to the people. So I mean, it's like it's like the old adage of using your resources, and you use any resource necessary to tell that story.
Yeah.
No, and
I
they did
like
it
that.
so well. It was a broken um, turnbuckle turned into a part of the story, and it broke on DiBiase, so it made perfect sense, like Mozart said, for him to pick it up and use it. And it didn't affect the outcome. It didn't change the match at all. It added just another layer to that story that they were telling.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I can remember going through some of the coolest stuff that we did, and I always try to be careful not to give away tradecraft. I mean, we all know they pulled back the curtain a lot, but we did a bunch of scenarios around what if this really isn't the finish? How do you fix that? And as you mentioned earlier, one of the easiest is just pick them up and give them some more heat if you're the heel, like. But the more interesting piece to that is, I was saying earlier, is that eye contact. I was always taught eye contact with your opponent because you can see it in the eyes if they're there, if they're deer in headlights, if they're with you, anything. You can tell a lot by that eye contact. And I see a lot of pinfalls, and it's been in all through the time I've been watching wrestling, where you do that cover where you're laying on them and you're not making the eye contact, but you make it before that. And I'm wondering where the failure comes, like, and this is where you can really bring some insight, because I never worked a TV match. I've never been produced through a TV match, but it feels to me like the instinct, especially from the inexperienced wrestlers, has been lost. Like, they don't have that DiBiase Magnum instinct. One might say, who does? But again, most wrestlers back in those days who were good had that instinct.
Well, just like you alluded to earlier, just like we're doing TV and everything else, this tells a story. The facial expression, it tells the story, and not only tells the story with us, but to our audience. So, I mean, what you see here resonates throughout, the entire place, whether it be the people you're working with or the people watching you, and so the facial expressions are so important. Just like in TV, they call it the money shot.
Mm-hmm.
This is the seller right here. This
Right.
this tells your story.
Yeah.
That's what TV, film, acting, drama, entertainment, everything. It all starts here.
Yeah.
But when you have a match, against whoever it is, and X goes wrong, especially on live TV, what do you do to fix it? A guy maybe misses a move, or the rope breaks, or you take a tumble outside the ring, and maybe you creaked your back, or your ankle, and you just need a couple of seconds more to kind of get your wits about you. How do you right the ship again after something's gone wrong on live TV?
Well, with the bigger companies, it's pretty much a team effort. Uh, you have the liaison between the referees, the grill in the back, the medical, like if the doctor's on hand, of course, and with the talent in the ring. It's a team effort. There's constant communication. And with the bigger companies, you have agents and producers for each match too, and we're all watching at the same time. And
I think we lost you again,
Yeah, I
Stro.
think we lost him again.
how about now? Can you hear me? How about
No,
now?
we can't hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. Oh,
Nope.
how about now?
All right.
Yeah, Stro, we can't hear you
Yeah,
again.
I
I'm
can't hear
sorry.
you, Stro. I'm sorry.
I see you fine.
Yeah, we can see you. Unfortunately, we can
You're
see you but
telling
not
me the
hear you.
story with your face.
You can't hear me?
Right.
Yeah, it's
But-
completely gone again. No sound.
Oh my God.
So
The,
we talked about getting there with the ring. I guess what I'll call inspection. You're walking over it and things like that. Are you, especially when you go to an ECWA show? Sorry,
I think.
the crowd is so close. I mean, are you taking that into account, Mozart, when you're in the ring, knowing that
my thumb is
your space is now less than it would normally be, or what we're used to? I mean, do you take that into account now? As you move about the ring, and
You mean the crowd being close to the ring?
yeah, the crowd being so close.
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah, because
it's got to be tough sit, well, listen, I love sitting that close because you're right up on the action, but it's got to be tough for the guys and
Yeah.
girls in the ring to work with an audience that's that close.
The last thing that any of us want in the ring is for someone to get hurt, right? So even if you go out of the ring and inadvertently and a foot flies and catches somebody in the face, or I mean, that can cause a lot of problems. Like, that's lawsuits for the company. That's just you're hurting somebody. So yeah, when you see that the ring is that close, you kind of have to use some common sense and say, okay, what side, if any, are we going to be able to do any type of the out of the dives or anything like that? And they'll usually tell you flat out, do not dive on these sides. This is the side I want you doing any of that stuff on, or they'll
Okay.
usually make one side where there's some room for that. But
Right.
again, you're going to work very tight. You might not have a lot of room, so you'll see the guy come up and over pretty tight instead of going over and out. It's
Okay.
there's a lot of there's much more improvisation even in what I would say are the overly produced television matches, because sometimes again people are going to get hurt, and it's like they can say, all right, go to the next spot, or oh, okay, go home, do this, do that, what the end spot is. But you have to be able to critically think in the ring. And sometimes I think wrestling taught me to be. This is not the case, but I'll look at other folks like not being able to make snap decisions while driving, not be able to make snap decisions while in a business meeting. Wrestling taught me that, and it's bled into every other aspect of my life to teach me to be able to be a little bit more um, reactive. Now, I'll be very honest, and where it did hurt me. And it probably took a lot of years of therapy and some work with some friends, but you also become, at least I became very judgmental, not you, but I became very judgmental because I felt like I could smell the work. If I walked into a room and I felt like this person was not on the up and up, I'm going to smell that way before anybody else does. And that's
Right.
just because of being around, not even necessarily being around shady people in wrestling, although I've been around a few, but just because you're taught how to, and you've watched the instincts of other people and you've heard the stories. What you have to do is okay, yes, I have that ability, but just like being in the ring and when things go wrong, okay, it didn't go wrong yet, but I'm looking at in that situation, I may be looking at a person and I'm like, yeah, I don't know about them. There's something about them. There's an attitude that story doesn't make sense. They're trying to garner too much attention when it's not necessary. All these little like red flag triggers. Well, if I walk into a ring and I see, all right, oh my God, the top rope is really loose. We're very, very close to the crowd. Well, then you start to critically think. Everything we talked about could be out the window. Now, again, what did we talk about? Well, hopefully just what you needed to, what to finish, what do you want to do here, there. Not necessarily was it this whole scripted thing, like I think even still a lot of fans might think it is, because you have to be able to critically think really fast. Well, I can't do that. Okay, what can I solve the same thing by? What if I just want to tell the story that I'm gonna bump this guy until he comes back on me and lights me up as the baby face, because typically a heel should never out wrestle the baby face, even if this is interesting, even if he's the much better technical wrestler.
Right.
So if I were to wrestle and he is amazing, the great American Dragon, he's a much better technical wrestler. But if I were the face, he would make sure that something happened where he kind of either screwed himself or he got kind of outshined
I'm
because
a
of
big believer.
something.
Maybe and maybe I'm wrong, but my
Yeah.
philosophy has always been that a heel should never win quote unquote clean. It should never be a clean pin. There should be something that
It
happens just before the pin or during the pin, pulling the trunks,
most of the
putting your feet
time,
on the ropes. There
yeah.
should always be that caveat that you didn't, yeah, you beat me,
I
but you
think
had
you
to
can have a clean
beat me.
pin. Yeah, well, I know you can have a clean pin based on what happened in the rest of the match. But in a situation where you're wrestling somebody, right? So anyway, what, like, to your point, like what could I do? What would it, how, if my thought is I'm using the top rope and I'm just going to whip him off and keep bumping him with elbows until finally at one point I miss it. He comes off and he gives me the high cross body and I kick out mad and I leave the ring, as a heel, because
Right.
babyface is not going to run from the fight or shouldn't. So I look at the rope, critically thinking it looks shabby. Well, guess what? Now it's just all short arm stuff, whip under, bump them,
Right.
body slam them. I'm still escalating I still want to be careful to escalate each bump up. So in other words, I don't want to get in the body slam first, which is the biggest thing,
Right.
and then work back to like an elbow. So then I might be able to use the corner. You just want to start critically thinking and immediately communicating with your partner, your opponent. Again, eye contact. Like obviously, if we look at the rope and it's shoddy, and it can just be like, take the corner and come back out, whatever. Um, you know, let let's dance reversal, and I'll suck in for an elbow. So we can still accomplish the same thing without changing the thought process of how we wanted to escalate the match or how we know it should escalate.
Right.
And I think that that's where wrestlers, pro wrestlers, and even shoot fighters and amateur wrestlers excel is that critically thinking. If you look at a lot of what catch as catch can is, it's human chess. It's physical chess, right? Because you're just trying to counter the hold.
Right.
If you're in a hold, you want to escape the hold. You don't want to be there to begin with, right? In those type of situations, which is kind of the story you're telling if you're in a chain wrestling, event sequence. But yeah, I think that critical thinking is huge in wrestling. And if you were to sit a guy down brand new, if you sat me down brand new, and for example, and I did sit in the office with Jim, and he explained to me everything about the business that my limited mind at that point in time could comprehend, because it's kind of like what's your age level in wrestling too. Like you
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
teach a 5-year-old calculus unless they're a prodigy, right? So you teach them age appropriate stuff. So if you were to sit me down at that point in time and say, I'm going to teach you how to critically think, there's probably going to be one or two reactions like, okay, I don't really care how to do that. I want to learn how to wrestle. Or what do you mean? Like, who are you to tell me that? Right.
Right.
But if you step back and think about it, they won't tell you that. They just say, hey, we're going to instruct you. Don't worry. We're going to give you all the tools. And as you're working through this, you'll fail. You'll have you'll blow a spot and it'll look like crap and everybody just freezes. And guess who's there to see it? You and the guys you're training with. Right. Um, and as you start to work through those things, and the instructor would stop us, Glenn or whoever it was would stop us. But all right, freeze. That was Simon Diamond. Like, freeze, don't move in the ring. And we're all just sitting there like, okay. He's walking in. Now he's going to be like, okay, he's going to start to then walk you through either the best way to get there or several ways. And whichever one resonates with you is the one that you'll probably will start to develop your mindset.
Okay.
So it's a super interesting process. I loved training wrestling. Probably, I loved learning it. Right, there was a time when I actually loved learning it as much as I loved being in the ring to perform it. Right, so that was just kind of like the cool thing. Like I was, I'm going to get to hang out with the guys. I'm going to get to meet this guy or that guy or somebody that you respected, or it was going to be a great match on the show that you wanted to kind of kick back and see. But the training when things go awry is, it, man, if you leave that out, then you've not been trained to wrestle professionally or wrestle at all on any level.
Right.
I think it goes with any combat sport. Like if you're boxing, you can know all day long, how to parry, how to block, how to, slip the jab, how to, roll your shoulder. Like there's all these techniques, how to step away, how to step forward, which footwork is very important too in both boxing and wrestling. There's similarities and differences to both. Um, but and one of the similarities is don't cross your feet. Um, that's a real simple one because you'll end up on your face. But
Right.
if you know all these technical things, but you don't know what to do when somebody's raining punches down on you and you can't block and you can't get out of that situation or you can't absorb it, in the way that you need to not take a vicious body shot or get knocked out in a boxing match. In a wrestling match, you know, how do you not get submitted? In a professional wrestling match, how do you keep the story going? You know, the show must go on, right? The
Right.
show must go on. And there are very few exceptions, right? But the show must go on. The
Right. And
next
what
match,
what
go ahead.
irks me is, you know, you and I are
Something,
wrestling,
wait,
right?
something irks you? I wouldn't have
You-
guessed.
so
I love you,
what
Howard.
irks me is, you know, let's say, you know, pretend in the fantasy world that I actually have wrestled and I have some experience, which I have zero. But you know, I'm a
Hmm.
bigger guy than you, so I'm
Yeah,
going to pick you up and do the power bomb. But I
yeah.
don't grab you right and you slip, and we both kind of fall to the mat, which I've seen hundreds of times on Raw,
Yes.
AEW, SmackDown, you name it, Ring of Honor.
Hmm.
But then I go right back to that same thing again. I'm
Okay.
like, listen, it didn't work. Like we slipped, but don't play it off like it slipped. You know, while you're down there, maybe drop an elbow, pick you up, whip you to the ropes, clothesline you again, weaken you up again, and then try it
Hmm.
again. It just feels wrong when we try to do something, it fails, we go immediately right back to it again.
That's one of the
It just
most
looks fluid. It doesn't look natural.
interesting things. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most interesting things I think I've ever heard you say related to wrestling, because as a guy who, you know, you've never officially trained, you've never done any of that, to you as just the fan who loves watching it, yeah, it's real awkward. So what we're taught is, and I've seen it many times too, you're right, never do that. Never, never, never. There is no exception to that rule to go right back to the spot. It's always considered incorrect. So
Right.
you
We can
do.
work back to that. It might take
Yes,
30 seconds, a minute
exactly.
and a half, but we'll go back
And
to it.
I'll tell you something else. The golden rule of thumb is, how integral was it to your finish? Because if it wasn't, don't even go back to it.
Right. Then we'll go
If
back to
it's
it.
integral to the finish, like, you know, for example, that is the finish,
Right.
work right back to it. You know what I mean? Drop an elbow, have them kick out. They fire back up on you. You go right back into it. Now, if you blow it the second time, fuck it. It's not your move anymore. Get over it, move
Right.
on, go to something else and go to the back and reevaluate like why you were trying to do that move anyway. Right.
Right.
And that's the truth. That's the hard truth of it, you know. But I think that for you to notice that as an astute fan, those are the things that would drive me crazy as a kid when I was trying to defend wrestling to, you know, we had a huge group of us loved wrestling, but you had that small group that was like, oh, that stuff's fake. Why are you watching it? And of
Right.
course they'd point out the one time that, you know, a punch didn't look legitimate. And then we're lining everybody. This is a true story. We're lining everybody up with the VHS tape showing them Savage's jabs where he never misses one. And you're like, well, what is
Right.
that then? You know? So then you're going back to the guys who do it really well, right? But even that one time where it does look really bad, you know, for example, now like the curtains pulled back, but I still will hear people say, "Oh my God, come on, that was this far away, come on," and they're complaining, and they should, because again, for the price of tickets, you should never, ever, ever miss, ever.
Right.
There's no
Right.
excuse. I mean, there
For
is
what
none.
I'm paying. Listen, I'm
Yeah,
paying for a Cadillac. Don't sell me a Volkswagen. You know,
exactly.
that's what I want.
So that's an interesting take that you have. Like, I love talking to you about that because you'll pick these things up that most astute fans do, but they might never ever have the opportunity to ask somebody, like, well, why do they do that? Well, the answer to that one is you should never go back to that at any level. I don't care if you're the main event guy who's, you know, making 18 figures a year and has action figures. If you go back to that and blow it that badly, you're incorrect. You're
Right.
incorrect, and
But
somebody should be
here's a
telling you
question,
that you are.
and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to.
No, put
Um,
me on.
and you can choose to not answer it or
Is
give
it
me an
about that
answer.
period of WCW that you ride me about?
No, because
Oh,
that was
okay.
just
We'll
god
get to
awful. But
that.
let's let's pretend again in a real world that you can
Yeah.
deliver a drop kick, which by your own admission you could probably drop kick knee high.
Oh, mine's
But
hilarious. Yeah.
let's say you can do a Jim Brunzell kind of drop kick. You can
Oh, I
knock
wish.
my head off, right? So you hit me with the drop kick. You go to the mat. I fall down. You know,
Okay.
and I sell the drop kick. You whip me in. We're in another match in another town. You whip me in, and I hold the ropes, and you go
Hmm.
for the drop kick. and now you miss. You land
Yeah.
exactly the same way, but why does it hurt you now? And when it didn't hurt you when you connected, what is the science or the thinking behind a connected drop kick doesn't hurt
So
you, but when you miss, it does?
I wondered that too. So here's what I think it used to be. So many guys now throw the drop kick and land on their back. So if you watch some of the guys like a Bob Holly or Randy Orton or Ricky and Robert, they drop kick and turn out and land on their stomach so they can
Yes.
control the bump from the viewpoint of the crowd. If you just land on your back, then the theory is you knock the wind out of yourself. So if you whip me the ropes and I hold the rope and you jump up in the air for the drop kick and land flat on your back, that should have hurt. But again, how do you get around that when so many guys now just land on their back or they jump off the top rope and they do those? And I hate when they do them because I know damn well it's not the sweetest bump. When they jump off the top rope and they do the missile drop kick and land flat on their back. So when you
Yeah.
land flat on your back and somebody moves, the old philosophy, I don't want to say old, let's see, the classical philosophy is you're going to sell the back because that's what hurt it, knocked the wind out of you. You didn't land correctly. So you can
Okay.
control your landing on one of those drop kicks where you drop kick, turn out of it, which is the style when I do try to throw it. I don't land on my back because I hate that philosophy of landing on my back because it should
Right.
hurt, right?
Right.
Again, when I watch somebody, and I saw this recently, I never call out names for various reasons, but I saw somebody this week throw an elbow off the top rope and completely miss,
Oh,
land on their
yeah.
back. But the announce team's like, oh, that vicious elbow, was it? Because that looked like it hurt the dude who did it. When you land on your back, whether it hurts more or not, that's the visual is that's what you should be selling. That's what hurt,
Okay.
you
Right.
know? Um, but that's throwing away classical philosophy sometimes for the sake of new age thinking. Now, see, there's somebody said to me, well, and this is true in every era of wrestling or every sport. The old timers will tell you how much better theirs was. Probably true. Now, it is true.
I'll say it is true. Not probably. It
But
is.
when you look at what some of the things take wrestling, for example, because it's gone so over the top, it's so much easier for the classical guys, the old school guys, to be like, why are you? Because now you're asking them basically, you're not even playing the same game anymore. This isn't even the same sport or same business. Like, what are you doing? This isn't oh man, look, why are you doing that different? Why are you doing that type of a match? Like, what? There's just some really basic philosophical things like that where logic is thrown out the window for the sake of some what's supposed to be this pretty looking spot that ends up being crappy looking to begin with or to end up
Right.
with. That's where the problem comes when it comes, and probably with any sport. But I only played other sports as recreation. I was a terrible basketball player. I was not a good baseball player. um, I did have good timing in football and was okay at running, but I don't enjoy football. I don't like the game or the sport. Like, it just, to me, it's kind of boring, to be honest with you.
Right.
Um, but that's just me. Like, I don't really care for it. I like the athleticism. I like to see a dude let loose and just bolt down the field with a ball. Like, I like to see somebody throw a ball, 80, 90 yards, right? But um, I don't care much else about the philosophy of the game or whatever.
What
But
I like to see is the guy that can throw the football and then run down the field and catch it. And there's only been one guy that I've ever seen.
unless you're perfect, it's not going to happen,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. Only the
But
perfect person can do that.
yeah, and I'm not saying it's not. It's super athletic. There's a lot of stuff that those guys do that are unbelievable. Like, it's tough on your body. It's
Yeah.
tough on your knees. Like, football players are notorious for knee injuries. Um, but every sport's fun to play on some level, I would think, but it's just not my thing. So, but my point is that everybody's going to complain about that their generation was better. Now, again, I've heard football players, a football fan, so about, oh, well, they can barely touch each other now. And it's like, well, I understand. But also, if you understand what a traumatic head injury does, then you'd be glad that they're not. Because football
Yeah.
has a shit ton of fucking, I'm sorry, We can edit if we have to. Has
Well,
a shiz
the
ton
producer will take
of
care of that post
yeah,
production.
exactly. Dock my pay, Steve. We have when you talk about injuries, if you're doing something to mitigate injury, but not me, it is a contact sport, so understand that first and foremost. But so is wrestling. But if you're telling me that we don't need unprotected headshots in wrestling with chairs. No, we don't. It's stupid. It doesn't matter. It's not adding to the story at all. As a matter of fact, the shock factor is gone. It's over. It's done with. They're unnecessary. If there's certain things that are happening in football where the helmet's designed better, yeah, protect the head. Protection. Again, safety for the competitor first. Well, safety for the
Right.
fans first, because you don't want the your star quarterback turning around and throwing the ball in somebody's face because he can, right? So safety for the fans and then safety for the participants. So if you're watching it and you're expecting me or any of my peers in wrestling to quote unquote do the dance because you think that we should, well then I say then go to a wrestling school, pay the probably $5,000 now. I don't know what it is now. It's probably more than that to train to wrestle to or at a reputable school. Go through everything that I did and my peers did to learn how to bump correctly, how to tell a story, how to be fix things that go wrong. That's a huge part of critical think. Learn how to critical think in a professional wrestling environment and then be critical, and most of the time that's never going to happen. Matter of fact, I'm
Right.
not aware of anybody who was critical of a wrestler, had words, and then actually went to train because they could do it better. So
Right.
I'm not saying there hasn't been, but I highly doubt it. So
Right.
you have to have a respect for the people you're watching, right? So you don't want to look at them and be like, kind of like, oh, dance monkey. And then when the guys do abide by that, look at the injuries.
Yeah.
Look at some of the kids in AEW. Look at these guys who are constantly out, Even in WWE, look at the guys who are getting hurt a lot more frequently than say guys did from my generation or the one before it,
Right.
or the guys we grew up watching. Not that they didn't get hurt, but there was more of a sense of, and what's ironic to me personally, and I think a lot of people would agree, if you look at that, some of those old matches, like we used Magnum and uh and DiBiase, it looked more like a real authentic fight slash wrestling match than what you might see in today's environment, but they're getting hurt a lot less. That match had blood, you know, that match had vicious moves. It had, that one of the most beautiful belly to belly throws I've ever seen in wrestling, right? It had
Magnum got struck
DiBiase.
with a steel turnbuckle, the hook
Yeah,
that goes on. So it looked, very
yeah,
much like not Blanchard. DiBiase wanted to
yeah,
knock him out with it. It looked like like you said, a wrestling slash street fight at times. And it gave you everything that
yeah.
you could ever want in one wrestling match.
Well, when Stroh happened to be with us earlier and had some technical difficulties, but he was saying that something that was really cool was, used everything in your environment to
Yeah.
win, right? If you're the heel and that's your thing, like use your environment, right? And that's what I mean. You've heard me talk before, and if you've ever seen or been around a dangerous street fight situation or been involved in with one, you might grab the glass off of the bar and smack somebody with it, but you're not running to your car to get your barbed wire baseball bat and your tacks. So if you're
Right.
making it look legitimate, use what's already in the environment. And then it's much more believable to the crowd. You get much more mileage out of it. Um, if you, one of the earliest examples that I can recall of a hardcore fight was the famous, I think it was Mid-South Coliseum fight, the Rock and Roll Express, and God, I can't remember. Maybe it was Savage was involved. I can't remember. Um, but the point of it was, is I remember them going to the concession stand and everybody they're hitting each other with mustards, and it's entertaining. But again, there's a reason that there's a mustard and a ketchup jar there, and that somebody's, I don't know if they did, but somebody's hitting somebody with a relish jar or something. That stuff is there. It's in the environment already. You know,
Right.
that's why sometimes I have a hard time with, and this is kind of along with our what we're talking about today, when things kind of go wrong, go awry, and how to correct them. Why is there a ladder underneath the ring? I've worked at a lot of shows, and really the only thing under the ring is the stuff that you might need to break down the ring or fix it. You know, um, Why is that table under the ring? Why is that extra chair? So one of the things that you'll see a lot of times at an independent show, which I think is super cool, is make it part of the environment. If we're going to use a chair, hell, I'm either going to take it from somebody in the crowd. I'm going to ask them if I can have their chair, or you're going to use one. Probably the best thing to do, because again, you want to leave the crowd out of it, as you go. If you have a commentary table, why not go and give them the heads up? Have them come get your chair. But it's in the environment, right? I didn't go searching under the ring for it. I didn't go, do something crazy. Now, again, we've all heard of things, and somebody might challenge me, and I'm prepared to debate it. Well, why is it okay for you that, say, Bruiser Brody went and Cork and Hall or wherever it was and grab a mop and hit Harley with it? Because they were fighting. He found
Yeah.
it in his environment. Maybe he had to go look for it, but he didn't look under the ring, and there's a magic mop there. Wow.
Right.
Go figure. He probably, in the heat, I would 100% think that in that heat of the moment, Brody was probably like, "Hey, stay here," and he just went looking for anything he could find to beat Harley with. He wouldn't have cared what it was. Could have been a car from outside,
It
And
could have been an
that's the
exhaust pipe off a car if it was laying there.
exactly right. Could you imagine catching Bruiser out there cutting off catalytic converters? He would have started that trend in Japan before it ever became a thing here. But what I find interesting is people say, well, but the old timers did it too, the classical guy, but it made sense.
No,
If
and
it
and that
goes
concession
awry,
stand, and that concession
yeah,
stand you're talking about was actually in 1979 was the
was it?
original. It was Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee against. They were billed as the Blonde Bombers. It was
Yes,
Larry Latham and Wayne Ferris, who Wayne Ferris obviously went on to
it
be
wasn't
the
the Rock
Honky
and Rolls.
Tonk
Okay,
Man,
yeah, okay, I was wrong.
but it
I
was in
stand
Tupelo,
corrected.
and
Thank
it
you.
was well then um, Robert Gibson and Eddie Gilbert had another one. I couldn't see
Okay,
who their opponents were, but the original
super
one
cool.
was Lawler and those guys and Dundee
Yeah,
in
I know
Tupelo,
what I
and
was mixing up. It
they
was
cleared the concessions,
Didn't they
during that
do a
match.
big, you probably remember this without looking up, wasn't there a big angle in Mid-South where I think it was Randy Savage, maybe pile drive Ricky Morton through a table, and it was like this huge deal. But see if I think I have the guys right. I could be wrong on that, but the the point is that you did something like that back then. They wore a neck brace. They were off of TV. Weren't going to see them on the house show up the street until the said injury was enough that they could come back and compete, right? Did you find that one? I'm not
Yeah, and
sure who
actually
did that.
it was in 1984, and the
84.
title to the title to the YouTube video is Randy Savage tries to kill Ricky Morton.
Yes. I remember that. Yeah. And but when things go awry, like, so let's say, for example, the table didn't break. I highly doubt guys of that skill would just sit there and keep doing it over and over and over again until it broke. But that's likely what you'd see in today's environment, because their thought is, and I get it, well, the table has to break. It has to. Does it? Take him off and do it on the floor. You know,
Right.
there are critical thinking skills that I feel like we're losing in terms of getting from A to B in a wrestling match. Again, simple things like, I mentioned it. I think, I don't know if it was on the VOC Nation or here on, I still call it a lariat. There you go, Steve. I throw a nice left-handed lariat, by the way. I'm just kidding. But I was mentioning something like about how that referee's 3 count is the only real shoot in today's modern wrestling, or has been for a long time. And when the person doesn't kick out, too bad. Just count to 3. Especially, and there is probably never a time, especially in a highly produced environment where television is the product, that referee doesn't know the finish. And if they don't, they absolutely, unquestionably, undeniably should. So if you know that the finish isn't going to be impacted, again, Is it more important to get your move in than it is for authenticity? Apparently so nowadays. But that
Right.
shift in philosophy from the classic thinking is no, we just went home. We're done. I might
Right.
not have got my pretty move in. That's okay. Hey, if I'm Savage and Ricky in '84, and of course the Savage, God rest his soul, we can't ask him. But if we were to ask Ricky, Ricky, what would have happened if that table didn't break? Oh, the son of a bitch would probably pulled me off and done it on the floor. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's not the point of the table breaking; it's the viciousness of this. It's the viciousness of the
Right. And
move,
that's what he
and
was
that's
trying
the
to live
story.
up to, that Savage name by
Yes,
doing that,
exactly.
through the table.
You
But yeah,
know,
if the table didn't break, the floor would have worked just as well,
yeah,
right on the concrete
it's
floor.
exactly, and it's But I'm curious from your perspective, when you're watching, you've watched wrestling, pretty much all your life and certainly all your adult life. When you see something like that, even before you started to get a little bit more wise to what's really going on, how did it make you feel as a fan? Because I can remember as a kid, but I'm curious, how did you feel when you would see something that you knew was not right?
As far as when something didn't go right, or
Yeah, and
uh,
it just looked awkward, or it was like weird. Like I mean, I
it,
pretty much know how you feel now when you're
yeah,
watching TV and you just are like, man, come on. But what about when maybe you were younger and like a little more invested in the realism and things like that? Because this will illustrate what a lot of folks, including us wrestlers as fans, think too when we're watching something just strictly from a fandom point of view.
well, and probably all of my childhood, um, I believed everything that I was seeing.
Hmm.
But there was all, every, like you said, you had those friends of yours that say, oh, this is fake, this is fake. Well,
Yeah.
I was one of those guys that defended it. Like, no,
Hmm.
this is very much real. It's bleeding. They're like, no, it's a blood capsule. I'm like, no, okay, you can see the cut that he's got, and you can see, obviously, guys like Ivan Koloff and even Dusty Rhodes, when you look at their forehead, you can
Yeah.
see the scars. So they're getting the scars from somewhere. To me, that being real, I'm like, man, they were just really vicious, or the cage did that, or the corner post did it, or whatever it did. But then when I would look at something like, man, did did he really not hit him? It didn't look like he hit him, or did I? Are they talking? Like, because I even kind of ignored that. Like, but then those whispers would come back. See, I told you it was fake. Like, you had that good and
Hmm.
bad devil on your shoulder, and he's like, "Nah, see, I told you, your friend's right. This is fake." And I'm like, "Nah, no, it can't be. It's not." And I'll never forget what really did it for me was, I believe I think it was a Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. I was at there was a it's called the Berlin Auction. It's just a farmer's market selling all kinds of different things up there. They had a huge magazine and bookstore in there. That's where I buy all my magazines, because they would literally have
Hmm.
every wrestling magazine under the sun there.
Oh,
And
cool.
I would buy my Pro Wrestling Illustrated or my Wrestling Observer that I could afford with whatever money I had. And then I would just thumb through the rest of them and read them while I'm standing there. And I happened to go through. There was I don't know if it was a Cauliflower Alley ceremony or something, and it was right around 84, 85. And I'm flipping through, and I turn to a big, half a page picture of Ric Flair enjoying a drink and laughing with Magnum TA right next to him. And at this time, these guys were heavily involved in a bitter feud. So what are they
Mm.
laughing about? Why are they? And it made me kind of,
Yeah.
now I'm let's see, 71. I'm 13 ish, or as Shay would say, 13. If you watched our,
I
um,
love Shay's accent. Yeah, super
um,
cool.
but I was becoming a teenager, and I'm like, what is going on? Why these guys hate each other? Why are they together? Why are they? First of all, why are they in the same room, sitting at the same table, and not only that, they're sitting right next to each other. And it made me kind of, again, that doubt. See, I told you wrestling was fake. no, there's got to be a reason why, maybe they called a truce that night, or I'm trying to justify it in my head, but I wouldn't call it insulting because they weren't trying to insult nobody, but it made me doubt the legitimacy of, do these guys really, hate each other? And then I started to rationalize, well, maybe this was taken months ago before the feud started,
Yeah.
just to kind of explain it away in a way that I would feel better and be like, oh, okay, well,
Interesting.
I can sleep at night now.
Yeah.
So it made me think about it, a little bit more, and what it made me do was pay attention. So I paid attention a little bit more each and every time, like I would like uncover
Mhm.
that nugget, or what do they call them? In the movies, Easter eggs. Like you watch a movie and they have an Easter egg in there that relates to
Yeah.
another movie or something. Oh, I found
Hmm.
another little, trade secret, and it made me get a little, and then I would
Hmm.
watch it with a little bit more critical eye, and then find something else, and I'm like, oh. And of course, then Vince McMahon blew the lid off of everything and said, "This is how we do it," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'm still going to enjoy it because now I've invested almost half my life into something, and I'm gonna keep doing it because I enjoy the product, the end product.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is once it kind of came out of the closet, if you will, and was like, okay, well, it's entertainment. I still think, well, it's still around today, the misunderstanding about exactly how it's done, because there's not just one way, but there's many right ways to do it and there's many wrong ways to do it. But it's interesting about that because that would have devastated me as a kid too, and trying to explain it to your friends that thought it was phony and goofy and whatnot. But you could easily say something like, well, I mean, you look at like boxers would take promotional photos together, and not always did they like each other. We didn't really have
Right.
MMA in the day, but that happens. MMA guys, they all got to stand up and weigh in and do their fight pose. Um, and there might be a little bit of showmanship, which is funny when that happens because everyone starts to cry about, oh, they're acting like pro wrestlers. Well, maybe they shouldn't, and maybe they draw some money too, if you want to be honest. Um, and Brock took a lot of heat for that, if you remember when he came in. Well, he's doing wrestling promos and drawing people to the product, which nobody was doing since those early days of the greats. Your Dan the Beast Severn, Ken Shamrock, Hoist, Mark Coleman, Don Fry. There were all these MMA pioneers that were just tough guys that could talk you into the building. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
It was pro wrestling, man. Dennis Coralluzzo himself, the great Dennis. I knew Dennis a little bit. Dennis was walking Dan the Beast Severn to the ring with the NWA World Title, hell, holding it high, while Dan's walking the ring wearing the UFC title. Talk about putting some legitimacy back on wrestling. But would you scream necessarily that it's fake if you saw a picture of Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn shaking hands in that? No, but they did with wrestling because they were looking for a reason to kind of to knock it, and
Right.
and I think it's interesting because when you look at particularly Ken Shamrock, who he trained extensively, if I'm not mistaken, with if you do your magic on this, I think it was I think it was Dean's dad. I think it was Dean's brother Joe and Boris Malenko. I think it was Joe that he trained under for pro wrestling. Ken Shamrock did, so he had done some pro wrestling even before he ever got to WWF. Um, but if you watch his instinct in the ring, well, I'm sure that they weren't overproducing him and, telling him every 5 seconds. I don't think they were overproducing Bret Hart and telling Bret what to do next, but he's in that era of some great technicians. And, it was just really cool because they weren't, you would never look at that at that point in time and be like, they're phonies. You might say now, well, it's which is like what I will say, like is it's predetermined, but fake, it's far from fake. I mean, you're obviously still getting hit, getting hurt. I mean, guys wouldn't be having surgeries if it wasn't real, you know.
Right.
So
Well,
I think,
getting back to Ken Shamrock,
yeah, who was it,
his
Joe?
well, they had, according to his, of course, Wikipedia being what it is. Um, the guys that trained him for pro wrestling were Nelson Royal, Buzz Sawyer, Bret Hart, Leo Burke, and Gene Anderson.
Okay,
That,
I'm pretty sure that he had something to do with Joe Malenko though, but or maybe that was just for shoot fighting. I'm not sure, but yeah. So I knew Nelson was part of that too. Brett though, that might just be lore. I think that Brett gave him some great advice. I know that they became friends, but that doesn't sound right. But it could be. Again, either way, he definitely had some really good professional wrestling training. Like all those guys, Gene Anderson. I forgot Gene was part of that too. Definitely had some really cool wrestling background. And
oh, absolutely.
it was it's just interesting the way that you look at that type of classical training and how much more adept they are when things go awry. And I'm sure that they did all the time. The fans just didn't know. I remember talking to a group of my friends and just having this conversation, like this similar thing, like what happens when it goes wrong in there. And I was like, just keep going. I just go to the next thing, which is like we talked about. The golden rule is don't go right back to it, because that's kind of like a giveaway. If you keep going back to the power bomb that you can't execute, or whatever move it
Right.
is. I just used your example. But if you um there's so many things. What if the referee gets hurt? That's another thing that we trained on. um
Right. Well, my daughters took dance class. I had,
mhm.
excuse me, three daughters, and every year at the end of the year, May, June-ish, they would have
Yeah,
a recital.
yeah, mine
And you go to
too.
the recital and you pay, an absorbent amount of money between costumes and the tickets for the recital and the concessions and ads in the program and all that stuff and the flowers that you buy. I probably, could have bought a brand new car with the money that I spent on dance recitals. But
Nice.
their teachers, their teachers always told them that if you're doing, your routine, especially if you have a solo, because some
Yeah,
kids got to do a solo act. If you mess
right.
up, nobody knows you messed up but you. Just
Exactly.
go. Go to your next step in that routine like it was part of the routine. So same thing, you're wrestling, something goes wrong, let's go to the next step. And if, like you said, if the power bomb's the finish, well, then we got to figure out how to circle back around to the finish, because nobody's going to believe that, I tried to pick you up and it didn't work, and I pick you up again and boom, you know, it just looks ridiculous. But just move on to the next thing. But God, to your point, the referee's not a referee's legitimately hurt. He takes a bad bump. He's out
Hmm.
of the ring. Now what happens?
Well, this is an interesting one, because the first thing that somebody needs to do is go check on the referee. So
But who
obviously
does
it
that?
should
Like,
baby face.
does the baby
It
face do it?
it should be the baby face, and no matter what's going on, if he or she looks down and out and hurt, then I need to find a way to get over there. I need to critically think about it. I need to bump that heel, be like, stay here, and I need to go over, and I need to be checking on that referee. And if they're legitimately that hurt, which I don't recall anybody ever getting that banged up in any of my matches. We'd all check on each other. I had many referees. I had some great referees. Paul Turner from AEW was in a lot of. He worked with me a lot. There's a guy named Larry Peace who was really good. Then later, Sean Bennett, who's on Raw now. Just some really great referees across the board. And Sean was, God, he was so good. He was so good. It is so good that you don't even know how good he is. I mean, we just could always, especially in a tag match, which I've worked a lot of tags. I probably worked with him in singles too, but he would be on top of it if one of the boys got hurt. You didn't even have to guess. He's like, he's hurt. Here's what's going on. Cool. That's all his job is. He was so good though, and knows wrestling so well that he could legitimately call your spots to you. He could legitimately fix your spot if you needed to in the ring. So you would never have to worry about it when you're in the ring with professionals like that. Paul was much the same way, and maybe not at the time as elevated because he was much newer. But if you took a nasty looking bump and you were selling really well, he would come over, all of them come over. You good? Yeah. Well, I'm sitting there selling, I'm selling, I'm selling. He might come back. You good? Now, if they go down and they're not supposed to go down, which I don't recall that ever happening, but even when some of the referees, um, would want to take bumps, and I don't know if they necessarily knew what they were getting into. Maybe they'd take a big splash in the corner and it would just knock the hell out of them. And he might go down a little harder than you expected him to, right? So even though you
Right.
planned it, you go over to babyface is like, "Are you good? Are you good?" What would legitimately happen in that case is somebody's watching from the back. Um, for instance, in those days, it would have been Jim. He would have sent out another referee. Um,
Okay.
it's just seamless. But you have to let somebody know that that guy's hurt, because you don't want your heel going over and dropping a damn elbow on him or doing something
Right.
heelish or whatever, which wouldn't be a good, critically thinking, no, that wouldn't be a good thing to do. But let's say he is supposed to do that, then you have to let him know that he's hurt. Let him be. Let him, and just let him be. He's going to roll out. He'll take, and he should get himself away from, which is another thing, is get yourself out of the middle of the ring,
Well,
right?
okay.
So you're not in anybody's lane of traffic, anything like that.
Right.
It's a lot of common sense stuff that you lose sight of when you're hurt, because the first thing that you think of when you're hurt, especially for the guys that I've talked to that have had stingers or temporary paralysis, that might be one of the scariest things that you can go through in the ring. It's like, I've been in the ring with Mike Tobin when he rolled his ankle, and that's not fun, but we know that he's going to be okay. Ultimately, we just have to deal with it at that moment, right? He shattered his arm in a weird place. I think he told the story when he was on, but he broke his arm right here. Very, very odd place to break his arm. Um, and again, the plan was for him to run back in. It was a battle royal, but he had to leave. So if
Right.
somebody's hurt, referee included, your main priority at that point is get them out of there, get them safe. We as kind of warriors in the ring. I've been in the ring with my good buddy Brian Logan, one of the Kick Magnets perennial feuds with Brian Matt Logan, his brother Nick, and the awesome Chase Del Monte. Um, Brian broke his arm in a match with me. Leg drop, off the top rope. Bobby Eaton did it a million times. So did Brian Logan. But for whatever reason, he just landed a little off and put the pressure on his arm, and it snapped his wrist. And I we finished the match. We were just about done, but we finished the match. We had Bennett in the ring. Bennett was our referee, and before I I don't remember exactly how it unfolded, but I do remember Brian telling me he was going to suplex me into the ring, and I was going to float over and land on him, and one of the other boys would grab his leg, and there'd be I don't even know if that was the actual finish, and I don't think it was, but it was a false finish where he was going to suplex me and I'd float over and landed a crossbody on him. We did this with he's cinching me up, and I'm like, again, when I watch this back, it looks seamless. So to your point, as a fan, it doesn't look like we had a 3-day conversation. I was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he's like, "Yep, let's go." I was like, "All right." And there'll be something sometimes, Howard, when these guys get injured, where something kicks in and it's all business. Let's just get through the match. Mike Tobin broke
Right.
his wrist in the Super 8 tournament versus Thomas Ciampa. And he
Mm.
will tell you that, and he had Bennett. Sean Bennett was the referee. Um, there's 3 names right there that should, be in wrestling history, right? So Sean's currently one of the best referees on TV. Thomas Ciampa's the man on TV, right? He's the he's the D in DIY, right? He's going to do it. And
Yeah.
Mike was a pioneer in the original days of Ring of Honor. So and he was a chick magnet, but he broke his wrist, and
Right.
Tommaso would not let him. He's like, it's Super 8. It's Super 8. He said the way Mike tells it is, without those 2 guys, I don't know what I would have done. The pain was so bad, but you start to rally behind your guy too, and all of a sudden he becomes your priority, and he's the guy that you're there to protect. And oftentimes, if you go back and watch that match, it looks like a fight, because they're dedicated to the art. They're dedicated to what they know their job is, and they're going to deliver it no matter what, right? So
Right.
that's part of when it goes awry. Mindset, like everything, man. Like this, I love this conversation because I don't think we've had this one yet. Because so many times your hat has to come off. You know, to a lot to the guys that you're working in the ring with, to the professionalism. And that's why when I watch something on TV now where I'm like, there is no way I would have handled it that way. There's no way it should have been handled that way. But hey, what do I know? You know what I mean? I'm sitting home watching it
Right.
and they're on TV. But that's the irony of it. It doesn't mean that they're right. It doesn't mean that it was handled
Right.
correctly. It's a much different training regimen there where I think we talked about it a few weeks ago in person. It's they're trained a certain way. A lot of the young athletes are now for TV. They're not trained to be real professional wrestlers, unfortunately, because real professional
Right.
wrestling is again, I'll use it all day long because it just is, it's life, it's critical thinking, it's instinct, it's logic. It's for when people like yourself, my friends, when I sit down and want to enjoy wrestling, where I don't have to look at it and be like, oh dear God, oh my God, oh wow, you know, you just want to look at it like, oh my God, that was incredible. Oh wow, man, I want to meet that guy now. Oh, look at that match, you know. Um,
Right.
yeah, so
Well, speaking of things going wrong and having to improvise, probably one of the biggest things in recent memory, at least, and I say recent, you'll laugh
yeah,
because it's I remember distinctly. I was over a friend of mine's house.
mm-hmm.
It was SummerSlam 1997,
Okay,
um, and it was
that's not
and
recent,
you'll
Howard.
know no, but at least it's recent for me.
I know.
So um, I'm going back almost 30 years now, but and
Yeah.
you'll remember it as soon as I say it. It was um, the match with Owen Hart and Steve Austin,
Oh
and
God. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
and and it didn't the pile driver didn't go quite as well as you know it should have. Brett Owen has given Austin the pile driver. It's for the
Yeah.
Intercontinental Championship. I think there was a um, kiss my ass clause or something in there if Austin lost, and of
Hmm.
course Austin gets his neck jacked up, and he tells Earl Hebner, and he's told this on his podcast. He's like, tell Owen not to touch me, and Earl's telling Owen, don't touch Steve. So now Owen turns around. Now he's taunting the crowd, look, pointing down to him, look what I did to him. He's going to kiss my ass, blah, blah, blah. And then Austin finally gets enough sense to give one of the weakest roll ups
It
I've
was.
ever seen in pro wrestling. It's like, how did he
Yeah.
even hold him down at that point?
But
But
when you
they had to get
understand,
to the end,
yeah, but when you
and they
understand the
got to
extent
the
of,
end. But,
yeah, no, sorry about that. It just when you
no,
understand the extent of his injury, I don't know there's anything else they could have done. I mean, the fact that he was
no,
even able to do that, because that was a situation where they took him out of the ring and they're like, hey, dude, you might never walk again. Like, like, this is
right.
bad,
No, it was that severe.
Um, so for him to even roll him up, kudos. Sometimes you just have to suck it up, like, okay, it wasn't the greatest roll up. It is what it is.
Right.
Um, in retrospect, if you were to interview both those guys now, and I know Owen's gone, there's probably a couple other things they could have done, but in the moment, they did the best that they could have possibly done.
Right. And, and,
Yeah,
and that's, again, looking at it in the moment as a fan, I'm like, man, that was weak. Like, that was
yeah,
stupid. Like, but I kind of knew something
yeah,
was wrong. And then you hear about him, getting hurt and everything. You're like, wow, that was actually a pretty badass thing to do to even be able to
to
have
roll him
feeling
up.
enough to grab and roll, roll him up and literally not die, God rest Owen's soul, right in the middle of the ring, that particular
Yeah.
night.
There is,
Like,
as Stro alluded to earlier, we were putting in as many scenarios as we could when we would train because you get to a point where it's like, All right, we know you can take a back body drop. We know you can suplex and give them. So all the moves, like everybody's already gone through that. You're at a certain level and done it. So what's next? Learn how to work. Remember when we interviewed Glenn and I said Glenn really taught me how to work. Well, there were scenarios like that where what if he's laying on the ring paralyzed? I pin myself. There's several. That's one way to do it. But what if he couldn't move at
Right.
all? I could put myself in an inside cradle. Now again, I want to be careful not to move him, but depending on what the injury is, I mean, yeah, I put myself in an inside cradle. I can, you know, trip and fall, and he can put his arm on top, knock myself out, and he can put his arm on top of me. I mean, again, there's not one way to do it, but there's a bunch of right ways to do it. There's and in that situation, that's a really tough injury. When you have an injury like that, you don't have a lot of options because the option isn't, oh, he got his bell rung, let me pick him up and guide him through the move. Like, let me dance with the broomstick, as a lot of people would like to say, which is not an
Mm.
that's a really negative thing, but in a sense that's what you'd be doing if somebody rung their bell that bad. But when you start talking about somebody's nervous system, a neck injury, whatever, you know um I've seen a lot of guys. Sosha, I was in the ring with Brian Sosha, my good tag partner, busted his leg all up, and we still got him going to the top and doing the old Mountie double, senton, where we whip him off into the senton onto a guy. Well, he didn't really need his leg to land, so he just protected his leg and landed with the other one. Was to dig in and
Right.
kind of take some shock off of it. But it when you have somebody that's that injured, your options become very limited because, again, I could lean over and put myself in a small package, but what if I inadvertently did more damage moving him? You know,
Right.
um, there
No,
could be
absolutely.
situations, and there probably has been, where at that point the referee just has to make a no contest call, and then it becomes legitimate. You know what? Then honestly, like I don't know any booker who would be more worried about their talents. Safety, if we came back and said he's obviously, let's just say for example, he's going to the hospital, we know something's bad, they're not going to probably come back, oh, I got to fire you because you didn't finish the match. No, we'll come back, we'll figure it out. It went to a no contest, we can get around this, we can book
Right.
around it.
Right. And
That's
because
not necessarily.
the great thing about pro wrestling is,
Yeah,
or at least what should be, is there should always, there's always going to be another match. So you
yeah,
can always explain away this match by having yet another match,
yeah.
and then kind of correcting your mistakes later on rather than immediately.
Well, there's variables. Over the years, I've started to kind of do my tutorial with Jim, in the last couple of years, like asking questions. And I know you probably talked to me about this before. I would say to him, but teach me how to book. I don't ever want to book my own show, but what is it? And it's instinctual, it's involved, but you can't plan for some things. So there are things that you have to be able to just say, I didn't plan on this. Dusty didn't plan on Magnum, wrapping himself around a telephone pole, but out of that came one of the greatest babyface turns in history. I mean, and one of the most believable and legit. But who would have thought before that, say, well, what would we do? They probably wouldn't have known what they would have done. I don't think he had a contingency. I think he did what he had to do, thinking on the fly, being creative, being logical. And when somebody's that injured and you can't do anything else, the best thing to do is just get them out of there and get them to get like the emergency people. There's usually at least a nurse. I know a lot of places you have to have a nurse there. Sometimes they make you have an ambulance on site. You got to get them to the professionals at that point, or get them to to emergency care. Um,
Right.
But as far as telling the story, do you have to stop the show and pick up a microphone and say, "Hey, guess what? Stone Cold Steve Austin just severed, a C whatever it is, fracture, and get all technical with him." Now, you don't have to do any of that. The referee makes a call, and it's a no contest. And let's just say, for example, he could not move. he mustered it up and got it done, which is I've heard him talk about it, which is like it's amazing that he got that done, got that even that big of
Right.
a
Yeah.
roll up done. But and again, they just made the call that they had to make in the ring. There's nothing wrong with it. It worked out. History didn't shit on either one of those guys for that. It didn't even really matter because it mattered because it changed Austin's life, and but it didn't matter in terms of storytelling because you can always fix the story. If you run out of ink writing a book, get another pen. You know what I mean? If your computer
Right.
goes down, switch the hard drive to, you know, go to the cloud and pull it out on another laptop, whatever. But you can always make those adjustments, and I think that's one of the coolest things about pro wrestling is the shifts they have to make. We just saw one yesterday. You know, WWE had to make a big call yesterday. You can
Yeah.
shift based on somebody's legitimate situation in the ring. Something that comes out, an injury that comes out of the ring, or we've been talking a lot about injuries, but the whole going awry thing, no matter what, like if the ring becomes to a point where you can't bump on it because there's a bad board, or you know the the lighting goes down, like you just have to improvise.
Right. No, and and it's good. It's good that at least at some level, at least back in the day, that you were taught to. Okay, well, like Stroh said earlier, use what you have, and it's always easier for a heel to do it because most of what's around ringside is already illegal. You can't bring it into the ring, but you can
Yeah,
make it, part of the story. And I can't remember who was wrestling, but they brought, I don't know if it was a chair or a piece of board into the ring.
yeah.
It might have been a piece of plywood, and he was going to whack his opponent with it, and he'd already had it, and obviously the guy was a heel, and I wish I knew who it was. Um, and the babyface was kind of getting up, and the heel's holding the board up like he's really going to whack him. He's going to whack him, and what happens is to show that it's real, he whacks it on the ring rope, and of course it reflects back and it busts him in the head.
Oh
He
my
falls down
God.
and drops the board, and then at this point the babyface is now up and conscious, and now he's able to make the pin because the heel hit himself with the weapon that he brought into the ring, which I thought
That's
was
good
is
storytelling.
great. So yeah, you don't have to use the weapon to use the weapon, but you can have the weapon still tell a story in a classic way because I'm trying to show you it's real, and out of instinct I'm just going to hit it on this rope and show you. And of course, being a heel, you're not technically the smartest guy in the room, so it does bounce back, and you slip on that banana peel, and down you go. And if I find it again, I'll send it to you guys. But
Yeah.
I just
So
thought
you
that it
know
was a
what's
real
funny?
interesting way to work around it.
That's legitimately something that most classic training does is that top rope will bounce stuff off of it. So it's like, hey, if you don't want it to come back and hit you, be careful, because it'll come. That's exactly
Right.
what it'll do, and that's not that hard to work. It's pretty much a shoot when shit bounces off the top rope and comes back. So that happened at what was that show a few weeks ago, the WrestlePalooza thing, the ESPN
The
show. Jimmy
WrestlePalooza.
Uso, he actually had the chair turned the correct way to hit Braun Breaker, which is the flat side of the seat where your butt would sit. So that jagged part underneath is the part you don't want to hit somebody with. So when it
Right.
bounced back accidentally and caught him, it ripped him open. Again, that's what do you do? They keep going. He rung his bell, and you saw right away the
Yeah.
referee was like on it. Referees are
Yeah.
pretty integral. He's able to keep going,
Absolutely.
but that they make sure that the guy is good because again, that wasn't part of the script, as a lot of the fans like to say. No, it was not. He just ate that chair
Right.
accidentally where his forehead did.
Right.
And then when you saw the stitches the next day, how you could, I was like, nobody in their right mind would throw a blade this way. It's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
horizontal, and he had that nasty jagged. Well, guess why? Because that's
Yeah.
That's what the
you
one
could
might
tell that
call a
that it
hard
was a
way.
legitimate cut.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
As Jimmy
yeah,
Cornette would say, well, there's the easy way and there's the hard way. That was not the easy way, you know?
right. But as we wind this down, we
Yeah.
actually and I'm going to tie this
Yep.
in, believe it or not, and I'm going to work my magic here.
What?
But on was it Saturday or Friday or Saturday?
Yeah.
We lost Diane Keaton,
Oh, I
famed
know.
actress,
Jeez.
was in I don't know, I say hundreds, but I mean she was in
I mean,
movies with Woody Allen and Al Pacino and
yeah.
there's a Warren Beatty and really just a you know just a
Wait, she
great
was the mom in
actress.
Father of the Bride too, right? With Steve Martin, wasn't
Yes,
she?
and Father of the Bride. Yes,
Yeah.
did television, did Broadway,
Yep.
did movies, but actually in I guess the mid '80s,
Yeah.
she did a interview with David Letterman,
Okay.
who for those that are a little bit younger was the Jimmy Kimmel or whoever of
No, he
that
wasn't. David.
era.
David was a real talk show host. Don't knock him like
Yeah,
that.
but I'm just trying to connect it, get them
Yeah.
that they were talk show people. But David asked her about, her love of pro wrestling.
Get
And
out.
she
I
said,
didn't know that.
oh yeah, she loves pro wrestling. And I'm trying to dig up the quote here. She says it's a new level of showmanship. It's unbelievable. She says it's like the circus. They said circuit, but I think it's supposed to be circus.
Yeah.
It's an event. It's great. It really is. It's like theater. And she just goes on about raving about
Yeah.
the sport of pro wrestling and how theatrical
Oh.
it is. And it's funny that that's kind of what we're talking about is missing nowadays is the theatrical art,
And she's a
to it.
professional actress who is
And
respecting
she's
what
a
the boys
professional
are doing.
actress
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
I knew I
So she
loved her.
knows a little something about theater. So, but hey,
Speaking of
Stro, can
theater,
you hear
Yes,
us?
can you hear me?
There we
got you
go.
Oh,
back.
beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Hey,
so sorry
Stro,
about the tech issues tonight. Oh man.
No, it's
no,
all
man,
good.
thank you for
It's
coming
all
back on
good.
because we were getting ready to wrap up here in a few, but here's something interesting, and I kind of wanted to get your take on this since you work there. So, um, we were talking about obviously things going awry, but you want to talk about going awry, that I'm just going to say it, that god awful, terrible period, it was probably the early '90s, like that. WCW just couldn't do anything right. I'm talking about like, you know, it, the Freebirds with one tag belt. Jimmy Jam Garvin's a Freebird, then he's not. It was the NWA 1 minute, then it was WCW the next. It was bad. They couldn't figure out what they were doing, like trying to break away from the NWA. The
I, I think
the
that's when
interesting
Ole
thing
Anderson
was
was
is,
booking. Uh,
oh
and
my
Rick
God,
Rick
it
would Ric
was,
Flair would say a lot like he knew that Ole wasn't high. So, but he didn't understand what Ole was trying to accomplish with the creative.
yeah, I don't know, but it was a time when it really turned me off the wrestling. I stopped watching for a few years because there was that. I was telling Howard and Steve the other day, on Messenger. We were chatting back and forth. There was that really terrible mishap where they moved the U.S. tag belts, and I know the Steiners were involved, but I can't remember the other team. I want to say it was the Freebirds, which I can't. I love Jimmy Garvin, but I don't buy the Freebird character with him. They were just tough street fighters, and like that was never his gimmick really. But that was just me personally as a young fan. I'm like, I'm not buying him and I loved him. I thought I looked like Jimmy Garvin and stole a lot of Jimmy Garvin's moves, but not as a Freebird. So I'm all fired up already as a kid, right? And then there was some mishap where TV. This is probably what Flair's talking about. Like they booked a title change, but yet their huge Saturday Night TV show, and I think they had showed it where they lost the belt that morning, but the show that was live that night, they're still wearing the belts. It was really bad. I can't remember the exact
That's
but what
continuity.
did you have any? Yeah, there was no continuity, right? Like, what did you ever? Because you came in later than that in the late '90s, right? Like you were outside of that whole. when they were starting to get when they were hot again when you were
Yeah.
there. But what was the dynamic from behind the scenes, if you know anything, where WCW was pulling away as a company, Jim Crockett Promotions, whatever you want to call it. I know the story. Basically, they basically stole the world title. So the NWA was like, no, you're not. You don't just get the world title. So Flair was now the WCW champion, and I mean, there was an international champion, there was an NWA champion. It was almost as ridiculous as like today's championships are, the amount of them. What was the insight? Did you ever hear anything from any of the guys about like what was going on at that period of time, or what's your take on that as a fan of it, of wrestling?
Well, yeah, that was during the transition where, like you mentioned, NWA was transitioning into WCW, and like they wanted to
Hmm.
do things differently than the old guard per se, and I and and then under new management, I think that was around the time where Jim Herd was taking the reins and doing all this
Yeah, I think it
crazy
was.
stuff, and then before then he was like manager at a Pizza Hut.
I know,
I was
right?
just going to bring that up. I was just
And yeah.
What? Go ahead, finish, and then I got
Oh
another
yeah, yeah.
follow up
And
question.
I
But
mean,
sorry.
creatively, I mean, he just rubbed a lot the wrong way with their ideas and stuff, and um, a lot of the guys there that pretty much were there from the ground up, with the NWA, and there was some big time clashing going on creatively.
Yeah, like I was saying to Howard, I was like, it broke me as a wrestling fan to see Brad Armstrong giving away candy, talking about he's the candy man now. I mean, this is probably the greatest wrestler walking the planet right now. And we're gonna call him the candy man and give him this silly gimmick. Like that was just to me like a most terrible thing I'd ever
that
seen
was
in my
god
life.
awful, and I love Brad Armstrong. I
Yeah, well, it wasn't
loved
Brad
all his
Armstrong's
work.
fault. He was working,
One of the most
Uh,
underrated talents of all
What
time.
Oh my goodness. I've read it many times. He's your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler.
I mean, he could
Um,
do it all.
what is it? Oh God, yeah. Yeah, he was fantastic. I was hoping before he passed away that he was about to have another run because it kind of looked like it, but that's a shame. But why is it, do you think, because you worked in a national company and it's obviously it bleeds in today's product, why do executives or whoever it is feel like it's necessary to bring in non-wrestling people? Because I don't think that you bring in somebody who's never watched a football game into the NFL and say, hey, guess what, you're going to run this company now. It doesn't seem as prevalent. I could be wrong because I don't watch mainstream sports, but why do they lean so hard? I say they because it's not me. Why do they lean so hard on outside talents like a Jim
Well,
Herd or, I'm not going to name some names today, but they don't really belong in wrestling either,
to put this in layman's terms, when you have people that don't know anything about wrestling try run a wrestling company, it never works. It's like expecting someone with no medical experience to perform an operation. It, it, you
That's
know what
a
I mean?
great, I'm stealing that.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
mean, if you don't
wow.
have any background or knowledge of your product, then that's doomed to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, how can Jim Herd not be a genius when he wanted, um, you know, to call Ric Flair Spartacus and give him a gladiator
Oh,
gimmick, and they talked about shaving his head, and like how more genius could you be than those two ideas?
I mean,
For Ric Flair, probably the
just the
greatest wrestler on the planet.
just the fact that you wanted to change such a successful persona that was not losing steam just shows the lack
No,
of common sense. It. I mean, even for even Vince himself wasn't going to mess with Flair when he came. He was still the Nature Boy. He was still the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, for lack of I mean, how revolutionary was that when he jumped
Yeah,
ship?
you want to
And
make Ric Flair
even Vince
Spartacus with
wasn't.
the earring.
Yeah, we choked you half to
yeah,
death, Stro, when you heard about that again. You were done. The eyeball roll says it all. That's classic. That should be the banner for this week's Down the Rabbit Hole is like, with special guest Stro with the eyeball roll. This is Stro.
Right? If we get an AI with his eyes rolled up, like I
Oh,
just
dude. It blows my mind, but I see it so many times and I kind of fear like we might be on the precipice of that again in some of the big companies with people who are like, why are you don't really know wrestling. Like, why are you making a major power play and a major call like that, And it's not even necessarily creative sometimes. It's just business wise. Like, why would
Well,
you think that would work? I
we did
mean,
have some. There were some few good things coming out of that era. Juicer,
hmm
Art Barr. I thought he was pretty cool.
oh, our bar. Yeah.
Art Bar. I mean,
hmm
I liked Art Bar. I mean,
Yeah.
aside from you know some of the crazy stuff, but I thought Art Bar was good.
And then it
Um,
was, I,
but
His stuff with Eddie
Howard,
Bravo
did
in
you,
go ahead.
did you,
Mexico
did,
was amazing.
oh, yeah. Howard's favorite wrestler of that era, little known fact was Bad Street.
Bad Street,
So,
yeah,
I just want to
Oh
point
yeah,
yeah.
again, why would you ever put him under a mask and see, that wasn't the Freebirds. By that point in time, I'm like, you've taken a Dixie badass bar fighting, wild-eyed Southern boys, if you will. Like, I know there was a tag team,
right.
those guys were great, but you've taken these fighters and now you've got a guy under a mask and a span with question marks all over him, like he's Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yeah,
calling him
yeah.
Bad
Road
Street,
Dogg was Bad Street for a little while.
like,
I've, matter of
yeah.
fact, I
Um,
wrestled, I wrestled him as Bad Street a few times, and
did you
yeah, and
really?
he also did a
That's
similar deal called a
awesome.
Dark Secret, but it was basically Bad Street.
You know,
hmm
I think the only thing worse than Jim Hurd running WCW would be, I don't know, hypothetically, if a guy wanted to start his own wrestling promotion and his dad happened to have a whole lot of money and he decides to start a wrestling promotion.
Yeah, that
Probably the
never
only other
happened.
worst decision. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that could never happen. I mean, because that's just so far fetched, it could never ever happen.
Well,
But
if
that
you
would be
have
the
a,
only other thing that would be worse than Jim Hurd.
I think if you put the right people in place, hire our producer, hire Steve, right
Yeah.
this wrong, um,
Right. Yeah.
because
Hire
if you
producer
have the
Steve. You
right,
heard it here 1,000 times.
yeah, if you have the right people in place who know wrestling, and you say, look, I'm a fan, I have this vision, but I don't know how to get it done. I want to hire you because I know you know wrestling, right? I'd love to have with Howard's money, of course, a wrestling promotion where Stroh's the creative advisor, right? He's going to say, "Hey, Stroh, I have this vision. This is my roster. I'd like to see these two guys culminate in this by next year. What do you think?" And then you leave it up to him, right? Because, and that's the philosophy of hiring an old school booker, right? Like, hey, I'm going to concentrate on the promotion. I'll be the finance guy. I want to see the return on the investment, but this is your job now to make it happen. And I feel like what happens is a guy like Jim Hurd comes. I don't know what he was hired for, what his job was, but he clearly knew nothing about wrestling. To be able to make calls like that and want to change a legendary character, I know character, Ric Flair is Ric Flair. Like, to want to change a legendary persona, to come up with some of the things that they did, with just the inconsistency with titles and title changes, and because Howard was asking, and it was, I still don't know the answer to this, by the way. It's now greatest mystery in my life, Howard, is what happened to the other tag belt when Garvin and Hayes were the
Uh,
champions? Why was just one of them carrying a belt? And I joked with
yeah.
Howard
So
today. I was like,
it was one of the Halloween Havoc, Stro, and the Freebirds. I call them the Freebirds because that's what WCW called them. It was Michael Hayes and
Hayes and Garvin.
Jimmy
That's what I
Garvin.
liked it. Yeah, great
I
team.
can't remember. Oh, they were wrestling. I think they were wrestling. Were they wrestling the Dynamic Dudes at that time? I can't remember.
Oh,
But
maybe.
Jimmy Garvin came out and Michael Hayes came out as the NWA Tag Team Champions. But only Jimmy Garvin had a belt. Michael Hayes didn't have one.
Oh, it was Hayes
So
didn't have his belt. Oh,
yeah, Hayes didn't have the belt on. Jimmy Garvin did, and it's clear when they go up on the ropes and their jackets come up. You could clearly see the title around Jimmy Garvin's waist. Nothing around Michael
budget cuts,
Hayes'
man.
waist. And when they defended them and won, they literally took one title back up the entryway. They're a tag team. I thought you got one title for each person. I didn't know you had to share it.
I've never seen anything
But-
like that before.
They may have forgotten it.
Yeah,
Maybe he left it in the
That's,
bar they were drinking in. I don't know.
yeah.
What-
I was telling them
I
that
don't
back
know.
in the day they didn't have all these replicas and stuff sitting around. Like WWE has like 5 million belts for every championship that they have. So it's like, oh, you left your championship? We got you. Let's go out to the concession stand, you know? But no,
Right.
even still though, they have legitimately on hand like that. There's no way that they would ever not have their championships because they, you know,
Well, Jericho
probably have
lost his in
multiple
the
copies of
bathroom.
all.
It's AEW.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, so I just looked back to our messages, Maestro. It was Halloween Havoc 1989.
Wow. 89. That's when that broke my heart, Howard, because you're coming off of the NWA at its height, man. Like, hey, these guys are gonna be this is the real deal. Like there's Manny Fernandez, there's Jimmy Valiant, Dusty, the whole Nikita, Ivan. Like
Nikita. Yeah.
it was just and then all of a sudden, not even a year later, I'm being fed. This is the Freebirds, and I'm like, no, that's gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, because I'm gonna steal his song
Yeah.
when I start to be in wrestling. And I did, but
Right. You got to
but,
always
you know,
print his hair and everything else.
But
I'm gonna
Like,
steal his hair.
that's who he
everything.
was.
I'm gonna do it, you know.
Right about that time too.
Oh my God, yeah.
I forgot about the Black Scorpion.
True.
Oh.
Is the lore true that they had no idea where they were going with that, like who it was supposed to be?
Right.
Like it's just like, okay, let's just start this thing. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, it
but
was supposed to be a push
that's what
for Al
they
Perez, apparently. But he
really.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I thought Al Perez was supposed to be the original
I
Black
never
Scorpion.
heard that. That's super cool. I
And
was
then I
like,
think he left or something, or didn't renew, or something like that. So they had to kind of scramble to find a replacement.
so that Stargate
Wow.
entrance, man, when the Black Scorpion finally appeared with a UFO and he came out with a UFO and you
Oh,
saw the
wow.
big nose, you knew it was Flair. I mean,
Yeah. It
yeah,
was so obvious. It was so
Yeah,
that
the
is
obvious.
robe,
crazy
too, I
that you
mean.
can. But it's yeah. It's kind of like saying my favorite though is saying that like Dusty wasn't the Midnight Rider. I love that. Oh my God, so
They should have
funny.
went with that. Like a
I
Midnight
know
Rider.
the Midnight Rider was cool, man. Listen, no, who's cool enough to come out with a horse and come out to the Allman Brothers doing Midnight Rider? Dusty, that's about it.
Yeah. They're probably one of the only country songs ever make it as an entrance music. Like,
Oh man, and that's hardcore Southern rock, man.
Like a Midnight Rider,
Yeah,
Yellow Dog.
yeah,
Dirty Yellow Dog. Yeah.
dirty, yeah. It was.
And then how can we forget about the James Boys?
The James.
Oh my God, that was
And Mr.
classic, man.
Everybody thought it was funny.
I want to do.
Brad
I'm gonna,
Armstrong, and he get the big surprise win over Beyonce.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was cool. I want to do. I want to do a character before I or a persona before I retire. I want to do a loser leaves town match and lose, and I want to come back as the Machines. I want to get a group of us, and we're all going to be like kitchen appliances, like coffee machine and ice machine, and soda machine, and it's going to be the most ridiculous thing that you've ever seen, But I find entertainment in that somehow. I'm just kidding.
Remember they were doing the Machines,
All right, buddy.
and like Andre was supposed to
Yeah.
have been from Japan or something, and he's like, you could clearly tell he's not Japanese.
Yeah. That is crazy.
But as we wind this down, guys, I appreciate the conversation tonight. It's great as it always is. Stro, you got anything coming up other than your show on Thursday night, which you can feel free to promote here? You got anything else going on?
Well, as you mentioned, Thursday night, on WCW Retro Podcast and VOCNation.com, my special guest will be independent pro wrestling star Crazy Shay out of Maryland.
Oh, cool.
So be great to catch up with him Thursday. I'm lining up, trying to line up some more guests for the next coming weeks as well. I had a great interview with Kid Kush last week out of the Carolinas.
Nice.
So yeah, thanks for rolling with that. I've got new purple logo merchandise on sale on my official website, chirp.me/Rob Kellum. And also now on Cameo. Took me forever, but finally I'm on Cameo. So if you want a video greeting from yours truly, feel free. So, I mean,
oh, cool.
And also finally, Rotten Tomatoes have put my profile on their deal, my filmography. So thank you, Rotten Tomatoes.
We got a legit celebrity, Howard, coming on with us. This is great.
Right?
I love it.
Nice. And don't forget, we'll be tomorrow night on the VOC Nation Matt Madness with Morgan and Mozart. I don't know what we'll be talking about. Probably pro wrestling, maybe a little pro wrestling, since it is a pro wrestling podcast. We should probably do that. But Mozart, you got something big coming up in November, correct?
What's that?
I said you have something big coming up in November, don't you?
Oh man, three-way match for the ECWA Legends Championship. Myself, Sean Royal, Aiden Chambers. I'd love to get those guys in the chat before then. I'm going to see if we can't get that to happen, either here on the Lariat or on the VOC. But so that's at 11/8, November 8th, Saturday night. Doors open, I believe, at 5. Bell time 6. So it's a nice early show. And it has to be, because when you got legends like us on, we need to be at the restaurant by 9 o'clock and home by 11. So, I'm kidding. But we got that. We've got the VOC Nation coming up. We'll be back here on, I still call it a Lariat, like as soon as possible, which is basically means next week. And we'll bring in some more chicanery nonsense and reviews on, food. I mean, I don't know.
We got the catering, VIP.
Right?
Yes,
absolutely,
exactly. Stro, if you're around tomorrow night, join us on the VOC.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
I'd be honored. It's always a good time.
But guys, thanks for hanging out. It's been fun.
I feel like we're like buddies now, man. I want to come over and have dinner with you, because I tell you, if anybody doesn't follow Stroh's social media, you should start immediately, because he's always putting up like the best of meals. Like, hey, I got this for dinner. Hey, I got this for lunch. And I'm like, I feel like I'm falling behind here. I'm putting like some ground beef in the microwave, you know?
Yeah.
But
yeah, right.
Stroh's an interesting
I'm microwaving
fellow.
a chicken patty for dinner.
Yeah, Howard sends me pictures of stuff his wife makes.
I'm try too. That I've written down.
Oh man. Yeah. Are you a chef though, Stroh? Do you like to cook?
A CIT, chef in training.
Nice. I like that. Well, there's a lot of wits around, wrestlers in training, so there you go.
Right. But guys, thanks a lot for tonight, man. It's been great. And, we'll catch up on the next one. Keep on looking. We're up to episode 5 now. So hopefully it'll be an episode 6 next week if we haven't been canceled. We're on a roll. We're on a Bill Goldberg-esque undefeated streak, Mozart. We are approaching that level of.
When do we get smoke and like menacing music? Like, I'm still working on the music.
Oh, man. I can't wait.
As soon as we did that for Dwayne Gill at an ECWA show, and he burned himself on the sparkler. It was like the funniest thing I ever saw. It was like, oh my God, poor Dwayne.
Awesome.
But guys, have a great night. Appreciate you. Can't wait to do this again.
Thank you all.
You got it. Good night, fellas. Take care, Stro.
You too. Thank you.
All right, brother. Thank you.